Hey, it's Diane, Key, and LG, host of the Now What podcast. This is the show where we elevate our people by bringing diverse voices straight to you from our website at nowwhatradio.com. We are happy to share the platform with today's guest. In this episode, we're going to talk with a woman who challenges the status quo in all areas of her life and the community she serves. Shout out to our new subscribers and members who have joined the movement at nowwhatradio.com. Thank you for showing us some love and being down for the show. If you're listening to the show right now and have not subscribed to our website, stop what you're doing and head over to nowwhatradio.com and join the movement. It'll take 10 seconds and we're asking for you to get that done for us. Follow us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find all of our handles in today's show notes. Now let's get on to the show. Today's guest is a small business owner, nonprofit leader, and a community advocate. She is the president of Roxstar Marketing, serves on numerous nonprofit boards and committees in Fort Worth. A true civic leader elected in 2021 by the people to serve as the Fort Worth ISD Trustee for District 9. She is someone I refer to as the Godmother of Diamond Hill, and we're honored to share with you today, Roxanne Martinez.
Thank you, Diane. I'm so excited to be here and to be a guest on your show. I'm equally a fan of yours and have been listening and following you, and so I'm just super excited to be part of the show today.
Great. Thank you. Yes, welcome. And I'm so excited that our schedules have finally connected because we have been trying to get this, going for a couple of months now. So I'm happy to be here with you. In today's episode, we're going to talk about all of the terrific work you're doing, some of your defining moments, and the importance of civic engagement. So for the listeners, what can you share about yourself and who Roxanne is? What was your childhood like?
Yeah, well, I've known Diane for a very long time. We grew up actually in the same neighborhood of Diamond Hill in Fort Worth, funky town. A lot of people will refer to it, we're on the north side, but we're very distinct from the north side. We have our own community called Diamond Hill, where I grew up, born and raised in this community. And, a lot of defining moments and factors are going to basically bring me back to where I grew up and how I grew up and just our community makeup. But essentially, I grew up here, went away to college, and then got back here as soon as I could. My family is still rooted here. Majority of my family lives here in Diamond Hill or in close vicinity of Diamond Hill. I'm now a mom of two, a wife, like you said, serve on several nonprofit boards, a business owner, entrepreneur, and just, all around just a phenomenal woman. So
there you go.
Excellent.
Own it.
Thanks for joining us, Roxanne. You had mentioned going off to college. I'm just curious, what you majored in, and was that first generation for you? I know the history of Diamond Hill and kind of the community there, and so many of us, including myself, our first generation college. Was that also your case as well?
Yes, I'm actually, I was actually the first person in my family to graduate high school on my mother's side. So both of my parents were, one's a high school dropout, one was a middle school dropout. So it came from parents, without a formal education. I knew from an early age that I wanted to go to college. I made that pretty much my mission throughout my, elementary, middle school, and high school years, that if I could do one thing, I wanted to go to college. And I worked towards that goal, the first half of my life. So yes, I am a first generation high school graduate and college graduate. And so I'm the oldest of five. I was also hoping to, be the role model that I kind of lacked in my life, and just to lead my family in a different direction. I guess if I could say a little bit more about Diamond Hill and where we grew up, it is a lower income community, largely Latino Hispanic community. When I went off to college, I was one of very few in my graduating class who went to a 4-year university. And we come from a small, tight-knit neighborhood and community where people don't often leave or not able to leave. And so that was part of my mission, was to get out of Diamond Hill, to learn what else was out there. And I did just that. And I mean, by no means was it easy. It was not an easy task or easy feat. But that was my mission growing up, was to get out of this little community that I had never left in my first 18 years of life.
Wow. So for you, it was education was that gateway, that key that you saw to leaving. And so what was your specific major in college, and maybe where did you go to when you left the community, if you will, in your education?
It's interesting when I reflect back on what I majored at as an undergraduate. I majored in journalism and communications. I don't know that was always my path. I'm a very strong writer. Always wanted to publish a book and just write about my life experiences. But I had a teacher that I met in middle school named Mrs. Funicello. And she actually, so she was our middle school teacher, and then she got promoted to the high school when we went to the high school. So essentially, she was part of my life for 7 years, 7 of those grade school years into high school, and she taught journalism. And I have no doubt that the reason that I went to college is because a teacher early on saw my potential and put it into my head that I could go to college. College was not something that was ever discussed from my family. They did not have any knowledge about, post-secondary education. The majority of what I learned came from a couple of teachers who, like I said, just pulled me aside and said, "You have the potential to go to college." And I was like, "College? What's that? Tell me more." And I also later in life, in high school, got to be part of some specific programs, trio programs called TCU Upward Bound, and also Educational Talent Search. I learned about those organizations, and I saw that they would help me get to my goal. And so literally I spent all my high school years with a mission to get out of Diamond Hill. I saw, I was told that education would be the equalizer and would help me to help my family. And being the oldest of 5 children and knowing where I came from, I just took the personal responsibility that it had to be me. It had to be me to shift the family dynamics and to just kind of break a lot of cycles in my family. And so I went off to the University of Florida. Think back to 1998 when I graduated. I didn't have a cell phone. My family did not have internet. And I went approximately 1,200 miles away from home to a campus that I had never visited in real life. The day my parents dropped me off there was the first day I ever stepped foot on the campus, and they left me there with no way to communicate. I think about that so much now. I think about, like, would I let my own daughter do that? I don't know that I could. But I never gave my parents the choice. It was my decision. I was going away to college, and I knew that I was making somewhat of a sacrifice to help my family, my family out of poverty.
Yeah. So speaking of that, that's one of the things coming from a lower, income area. You say you come from Diamond Hill here. I
would
come
say
from
we're poor.
a place. Yeah.
It was really hard for
Okay,
me.
yeah,
I was like
yeah.
tiptoeing around that, but Roxanne and I came from the same neighborhood, and it was the poor neighborhood, right? By all socioeconomic standards, but it wasn't like nobody knew they were poor. And Roxanne,
Right.
like, go ahead, Key.
But I would like to ask a question around just growing up, because one of the things I grew up in in a community that sometimes has been forgotten, sometimes has been kind of left behind, sometimes lacking opportunities, right? Living in those sort of environment brings its own set of challenges. What's a specific challenge, prior to college that you had to overcome? If there's something that you want to share, something that you had to overcome before you could even,
Yeah.
make it to college.
Go back to what Diane said, just being poor, like realizing that you're poor and people don't understand what it really takes to get to college. Even though I had the grades, I was top of my class, I had good SAT score, I had scholarships.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you the one thing that nearly, that the one big issue that I had that nearly knocked me out of going to the University of Florida is because I could not pay a $600 deposit. Even though I was going to get scholarships and financial aid, I had to put a $600 deposit down to keep my spot, and my parents didn't have it. I grew up in I grew up in a multi-generational home. It's in the home that I live in now is me, my husband, and my kids. I grew up in this home where 3 families lived in this house, in a 3-bedroom house. And, it was usually my grandmother, my aunt and her kids, my family. We grew up crowded in this little home. I didn't realize that I was poor, until I had this huge opportunity to go off to college and get this full scholarship, financial aid, like everything was going to be taken care of once I got there. But $600 was almost a barrier for me for it to not even happen. Another huge thing that, my childhood was just like full of challenges, but one of the biggest challenges I had my senior year, and a lot of people don't know this, but both of my parents were incarcerated my senior year. So my dad was in prison, and my mom was incarcerated for most of my senior year. And so the majority of my senior year, being the oldest again of 5, I had to navigate my brothers and sisters through school, making sure that we always had somewhere to stay. We were split up a little bit my senior year, where we had 2 siblings living with a relative, 2 other siblings living with another relative. And I kind of just bounced around. And so a lot of people don't know that, and all the challenges that come with that. So imagine a high school senior having to do FAFSA forms and all of the things that is required for a student to go on to college when you don't even have your parents there.
Wow.
And I want to...
I couldn't imagine. That's tough. That's tough. Go ahead, Diane.
Yeah, no, I just want to emphasize the circumstances in which Roxanne had to overcome. So coming from that neighborhood, like, I never even heard the word college before. So I knew Roxanne. She was one of the smartest people in the school. And I always thought, like, she's going to do something important. I couldn't visualize college because I didn't even know it existed. Nobody ever talked to me about that. But she worked the hardest and, was one of the, like, stars. If anybody could do it, she was going to do it. And against all odds. And so if you think about the rest of us, we're kind of like,
yeah, what I'm
left behind, whatever you call it. You know what I mean? Like, it was very much.
As I listen to you tell that story, all I could think of is, here you are. You're still a kid, right? You're still a kid. Here you are, still doing what you can to help your younger brothers, your younger sisters. And of course, that's a full-time job in itself. But also you had to maintain your schooling, your grades, probably had to take some college entrance exams because those were big when we were coming up. And of course, putting yourself in a situation so you could attend, an institution of higher learning, dealing with incarcerated parents. It's hard enough, in those areas. It's hard enough just being poor with many sisters, but you add on having your parents incarcerated during those time frames, which are very, very critical time frames. That just says a lot about who you are. And that's a huge thing to overcome. I appreciate you for sharing that. I'm curious to understand. Of course, we have poverty. I think people like us, we're always running from that poverty, that lifestyle. But I do want to ask, what was your motivation? Because, a lot of people that were around us probably didn't have the same results as us, right? So in that situation, in that pressure cooker that we call poverty, what was your motivation, and can you share how you escaped a little bit?
Yeah, being at the top of my class and being a very involved student, I was not only a great student, but I was like student council president. I was involved in all these different clubs and groups, and being involved in those groups. I was also involved, as a athletics manager. Being involved in those groups and those clubs and those sports activities, they gave me an opportunity to go to other schools, sometimes for events. I mean, I was in FWISD. I was in just about every group and club that I could think of in our high school. And sometimes they allowed me to go to another school to participate in an event. For example, I took an SAT prep course at Pass School. I think it was my junior year. And I remember, I remember asking myself, why do I have to go across town to Pass School to take a SAT course? Why can't there be one here in my school, in my neighborhood? But when I went, I remember walking through the halls of that school and immediately seeing inequities. I remember going to a school in Dallas, spending a conference, going to a conference there, and looking around at the school and saying, this doesn't look like my school. Why don't we have these nice chairs and this nice cafeteria and these nice things? And the more I got involved, and the more I kind of got out, like I said, I stayed the majority of my 18 years in Diamond Hill. And the minute I started to get out and see how the other half lived, I started to question why.
The other 99%.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Why can't we
Yeah.
have these things? Why doesn't our neighborhood look like this? And I just felt this great responsibility, not only to myself and to my family, but I think it developed in high school, a responsibility to my community to seek more and to lift not only, like I said, only myself and my family, but my entire community needed to know what I was seeing. And they needed to, and we needed someone to see us. And that was my motivation, and I have a nephew that's going off to college this year. He's going to play football at Southwestern University, and he has academic scholarship, athletic scholarship, and I'm reflecting back on my college years and thinking about the great guilt that I had leaving. Like, I went to college with a burden of guilt that I was leaving my family and my community for 4 years to better myself. But I knew what my long-term goal was, and it was to help my family and my community. I had a teacher my senior year. I can tell you that there were multiple times throughout my middle school and high school career that I contemplated dropping out. And that teacher that I'm talking about, Miss Funicello, I'll never forget that she sat me down one time, and I wanted to quit my senior year because I needed to work. And she told me, Roxanne, the best thing that you can do for poor people is not be one of them. And she said, I know you want to drop out to support your family and to work, but the best thing that you could do is push through, finish this year, go off to college, and come back for them. And she's like, it's not going to be easy. It's going to feel like you're leaving them. But that's the best way that you can help.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
Roxanne, you know, you did it, right? You said, I'm going, right? I'm going to make the jump. So you go to college, you're in, you found your $600. Your parents dropped you off. You were, you had done all of the work, academically. So just briefly share like your college experience. Was it, I think you were a sorority sister. Even thinking about the inequities, did you feel like in college you were, college ready? Did you feel like you were prepared as your other class? I'm sorry, with your college class.
Going into college, I knew that I was in for culture shock, and I kind of knew what I was in for and what I had signed myself up for, but I really didn't grasp it until I got there. Um, I like flunked my freshman year of college. I did worse. I don't think you can do worse than what I did my freshman year.
You might want to see my transcript.
Yeah. Hey, a key NLG.
I got to UF. What was that? Go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I was gonna say Key and LG. You both went to college right after high school. Did you guys have the same experiences, or can you relate at all to, what Roxanne, was faced with going to college and actually being a college student?
Definitely. When she talked about guilt, that's something I always thought about, that feeling. I've never been able to kind of put it into words, but she did it masterfully, because you grow up with a set of individuals, and in one ear you have people who know your potential, who obviously, I mean, you've gotten into college, you've gotten scholarships, and you're making that move. And in one ear you have people telling you, go far away, don't look back. But in your heart, these are the people that you love. These are the people that you grew up with. These are the people that you know, and you feel like you're letting people down by not being there. So I think a big part of that escaping is dealing with is that guilt, but also understanding, having the wherewithal to say, hey, I'm making these moves so I can come back and improve my community, which is I love your teacher who put that thought in your head. I wish someone had explained that to me. I think I would have had less guilt about making that move, because at that time I didn't have anyone to say, hey, go to college, build yourself up, and that's the best way you can help your community. And people were just telling me to just go, go, go. And I think that's what creates this, that pit in your stomach, like, man, like, I don't belong here, or, am I doing the right thing? Or, are my friends still going to like me? Is my family still going to accept me? And so I think that was huge. And I appreciate you just sharing that and putting those words, because I think you helped me settle some past, some past thoughts and ideas. But yeah, I just think that's extraordinary.
So Roxanne, it sounds like your first year in college was full of obstacles and challenges, but you pushed through. You earned your degree from a 4-year institution, and made true to your promise and came back home. Looking back, like, what's the one thing that college taught you about yourself?
Well, I learned through college, just how that very first lesson of flunking out and not giving up and going back and finishing what I started. But through that experience, I learned so much about myself. I failed out that first year, and I risked losing my scholarship. In order to maintain my scholarship for the remaining 3 years, I had to have a 4.0, because that's how low my GPA was my freshman year. I was determined that I was not going to let my family and my community down. I went back that second year. I was extremely focused on my academics. I knew it was at risk. Like, everything was at risk of me losing my scholarship, me being there in college. And so I went back and maintained that 4.0. And I also got plugged into certain groups. I joined a Latina sorority, Lambda Theta Alpha. I joined them my junior year, which is a little bit later than you typically join, but I had gone through some race and race and ethnic study courses, some culture courses, and it led me to get involved with a Latina sorority that really taught me to appreciate my roots, where it came from, that I should be proud of who I am and where I came from, and it taught me a lot of the advocacy skills that I use now, and so I think joining that sorority was a huge support network for me, and it helped me. It helped me finish college. I then knew I had almost like a second family there that was supporting me, pulling for me. We all had similar goals. We came from similar backgrounds, and essentially, I think my sorority and a lot of the groups that I was involved in college helped me to push me through, to teach me about myself, about my culture, and set me back on that goal of coming back and helping my community.
Well, you've had an amazing journey through college. You've overcome a lot of things in your life to this point. Some things in high school, some definitely some challenges in colleges as well. But you graduated. You made it through. What happens next? Because after graduation, that's when everything really begins. So, what happens? How did you get going? I know you're a business owner at this point. Talk to us a little bit about your post college. Your work experience, things of that nature.
Yeah, well, I graduated, like I said, I graduated from the University of Florida with a bachelor's degree, and I did finish in the 4 years. I immediately wanted to jump into the workforce. Unfortunately, I graduated the semester after September 11th, when the workforce it was difficult, it was challenging. I made a few moves. I did a few internships before I landed back in Fort Worth, but I finally landed back in Fort Worth and immediately jumped into corporate marketing. I kind of had to pivot with my journalism and communications degree just because of what was going on in the economy at the time. So I utilized those skills to enter a career in marketing. And I did that for about a decade, just working my way up the career ladder. I had some goals. I always had a goal of being an entrepreneur. I always thought it would happen like much later in life, like closer to retirement. But as I learned, there were some things, I guess God had a different plan for me. I was just aggressively climbing the career ladder in corporate marketing, had just landed what I considered a dream job to do marketing in the travel industry. I was 30 years old. I had just bought a house, and I got a diagnosis that would really just change my life completely. At 30 years old, I had just found out I was pregnant with my first child, and I received a diagnosis of triple negative breast cancer. It's pretty much an aggressive breast cancer that primarily affects African American, Latina, and young women. And so I was diagnosed a week after learning I was pregnant.
Wow.
Again, I had been working in marketing for these years. I looked to the support of my employer. Like all the other challenges that had come before me, I knew I was ready to work through this challenge. But unfortunately, I was terminated. I was terminated from my employer.
Whoa.
Yes. And in Texas, it's was it right to work state? At will, you can be fired you can be terminated for any reason. And so due to the amount of time I was going to have to take off for chemotherapy and surgeries and treatment, I was actually terminated while I was out recovering from a surgery.
Wow. So at the point where you need your health insurance the most, at the point where you need that sort of support group, that sort of stability, your company decided to go a different direction, as they call it. Wow.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I was making a great stable income. I had health benefits. I had all the, benefits that you'd want in corporate America. And then just at the drop of a dime, I was let go. And that I was not prepared for that at all. It came as a shock that like an employer could even do that. Um, I remember when they called me and told me that they were terminating me, I begged for my job. I told them that I would get up from my surgery recovery and go back to work the next day. Um, I knew I needed that health insurance. But essentially, the decision was to terminate me. And at that moment, I'm there. I have a mortgage. I'm pregnant. I'm fighting for my life and the life of my unborn child. Um, and I lose my health benefits. I ran through my COBRA benefits, and at the time, um, I wasn't eligible for any health care. And so I had to navigate this whole process of healthcare without insurance during like a most critical time of my life when I needed it the most.
So essentially, right, you're in this situation, and you have breast cancer. Now, we all have heard or know of someone, in some way who has had some type of cancer and they've recovered. What we don't know, or what I don't know firsthand, is like, where does that money come from to pay for your treatments, right? Like, is there like a cancer scholarship that people just grab from and go to, the treatment centers? Like, how did that work? And, did you have a payment plan? Could you do financing? Like, what were the costs in dollars and cents?
I'm glad that you brought that up, Diane, because it's an important part of my process. So think back, this was 2010 when I was diagnosed, and this was before like GoFundMe was really popular. Essentially, I lost my benefits, and I was told like you're going to need X amount of dollars to complete your treatment. Now, again, I have a very aggressive type of breast cancer. One, doctors had already told me that I could not prolong my treatment until after the pregnancy because this particular type of cancer could kill me in a year. So I would probably have the baby, but not live much longer after her birth.
Wow.
So I was really forced to do the treatment. There was research at the time to show that it would be safer to do it in the third trimester. And so that's when I did start my chemo treatment, but I had no money. So the first thing I did was cashed out my 401k. Like I had really good benefits. Like I said, I had been working my butt off the past 10 years. And I had a good amount in my retirement and in some of my investments. I cashed out all of my investments. I cashed out my 401k. I sold almost every material thing that I had in my home, my car. I sold everything I had to fund my cancer treatment. And I was still going to be short, like well short of what I needed. Going back to my sorority, I've maintained really close contact with all of my sorority sisters, and we're spread out all over the nation. When I woke up from having my first mastectomy, I got out of surgery and I looked on Facebook. My brother had collaborated with my sorority sisters. They had launched a Team Roxy website to raise money for my treatment. My sorority organized about 15 different fundraising events in different states and different cities. They essentially raised money for my cancer treatment before GoFundMe. This was like we sold T-shirts, we sold food plates. They held fundraisers, they held dance offs. I just remember raffles. Like I was always getting messages that they were fundraising. And so they would drop it in my account, and I was able to eventually qualify. Once I sold off all my assets and lost all my assets, I was then able, and only then, able to qualify for some type of government assistance and some of those scholarship and financial aid programs. When I initially tried to apply for them, I was told that my asset, even though I didn't have a job, the assets that I had disqualified me from any type of help. So I literally had to sell my car and just about every possession that I had. Anything that was of value, I had to sell in order to qualify for any type of government assistance. And but I really am thankful for some of those nonprofit organizations that came to my aid. Susan B Komen was one of them. Cancer Care Services was another one that helped pick up like prescriptions and costs and things like that. But I really owe my sorority and my family and my community for rallying around me and raising the money I needed, upwards to almost $1 million worth of treatment.
Wow. So in your darkest hours, first of all, that is something that is unimaginable for someone like myself to go through that, especially, at the same time that you are pregnant, about to bring a new life into this world. But it was the community, other poor and working class people that rallied together to help you through that, which is an amazing story in itself, Roxanne. And I didn't want to interrupt. Please continue.
And you hit it right there. When you talk about the community and who helped me, I'll never forget, like, high school classmates reaching out to me, people from Diamond Hill, from my neighborhood, like rallying behind me. Those were the folks, like working class folks, who were hosting these fundraisers and just really uplifting me and making sure that I was going to have the resources needed to complete treatment. It was through this process that I really learned how to advocate for my own healthcare. And I also learned a huge amount about the health inequities in our country. And so immediately I got involved with some groups around, health inequities, and started sharing my story. That led me to speak and share my story nationally, and I was able to gain a few more resources that way. But when I think back, like I said, I give full credit to my community, my sorority, and my family for really helping me through that journey. I owe my life. I owe my life to them. I owe my life to my community. One of the last fundraisers I remember, right before I had my child, I had the baby, I had a huge fundraiser at Risky's, which is a local restaurant here in Fort Worth. And to this day, my husband and we frequently eat at Risky's because they held one of the biggest fundraisers for me. And I just remember all these people coming from high school, from college, like all these folks that I knew coming out to support me. And I remember at that moment thinking, like, how will I ever repay them? How would I thank them for saving my life?
If you want to hear more of Roxanne's story, make sure you subscribe to the podcast from wherever you're listening from so you don't miss an episode. Tune back in next week as Roxanne continues the conversation, sharing her personal experience and circumstances as she faces being diagnosed with breast cancer.